Good morning. Thank you all for coming out this morning, and not a bad day to pick an indoor activity since it's going to be pretty warm outside. My name is Sarah DeWitt, and I'm a Knox County Master Gardener, and I am the co-lead for our Tennessee Smart Yard Outreach Project. Basically what that means is I'm a cheerleader of the Tennessee Smart Yard Program, which is a residential sustainability certification that you can do at your own property. And you can get that fabulous sign that we have over there at the entrance. But I'm going to be talking about some components of Tennessee Smart Yards today through the lens of rain and water and how that works on your property and what you can do about it. These are questions that come up quite a lot when we talk about Tennessee Smart Yards, and often that's because we're talking about sustainability principles that have to do with water and managing water. And so we're going to run through a few different ways that you can assess how water is moving on your property. And then we're going to talk about some water containment and redirection strategies that you can use on your property as well. And then finally, just a few plant ideas so you can go home with some things that like to get their feet wet and might be helpful on your landscape. So that's how we're going to break out today. I want to tell you a little bit more. Are any of you familiar with Tennessee Smart Yards? Okay, so this is a self-certification program, and Dr. Andrea Ludwig is a professor at UT, and through extension, Tennessee Smart Yards helps facilitate yard management practices that basically implement sustainability into the residential landscape. So just by looking at your own yard, you can find lots of easy, low-hanging fruit ways to fulfill sustainability principles and improve sort of the efficiency and beauty of your landscape all at the same time. So it's a win across the board. It's a win for the environment, for wildlife, for you, for the people who enjoy your yard, for your neighbors, etc. But this is really a program that really enlivens residents to think about what to do with the rain we get, the humidity, the heat, things like that, and really make it work for you within your landscape to the benefit of our ecosystem. So Tennessee Smart Yards is based around 9 foundational principles, and we are not going to do the whole set of principles today. That's a different talk. Happy to give that another time. But a lot of these principles, as I said earlier, reflect this water issue, water resource, water management piece of the puzzle that we're going to talk about today. So each of these principles, if you were to certify your yard, these principles act as kind of an umbrella, and under each of these headings there are a bunch of different action items that you can take on your landscape to sort of check the box and fulfill that requirement towards a Tennessee Smart Yard. I can tell you a little bit more about those check boxes at the end, but today some of these principles and the ideas and concepts we're going to cover in what I talk about are right plant, right place, which is the idea that plant needs to be in a place that it's most happy based on its requirements for light and soil and water and other things like that. A little to a lesser extent, we'll be covering managing soils and mulch, and that's because when you have water washing away bare soil, you have an erosion problem, which isn't good for you or for our lakes and rivers. In a lot of ways, we'll be talking about using water efficiently. We'll get back to that. Water is one of the key components for supporting wildlife on properties, whether that be birds or like deer on your property, you can do that. But lots of different pieces of the living systems and wildlife, they all need access to water. So that kind of is integrated into this communication. A little bit about protecting the water's edge, and this sustainability principle is usually talking about properties that are right up against some kind of lake, river, stream, pond water source, and how you can use a buffer zone with plants to help filtrate that water before it goes back into the waterway. But again, to a lesser extent. And then one of our main points, again, will be to how to reduce stormwater runoff. And that's beneficial to you because it helps reduce flooding potential at the end of your street. It helps clean the water before it goes back into the Tennessee River. And really, it helps you reuse water on your property in ways that are useful when we don't have a week's worth of rain like we've been having this summer. So good to kind of keep that water for a non-rainy day, if you will. So first, we're going to talk about these strategies for sort of evaluating how water works on your property. This is a really cool tool that you can go online to find out your watershed address. And I have a set of handouts over there. I think most of you got one. But that watershed address link should be listed on that page. You can also get to the watershed address link through the Tennessee Smart Yards website as well. So a lot of the things I'm going to cover today, if you think, where can I find out more, the Tennessee Smart Yard website is a really, really great place, and that's tnyards.utk.edu. But if you go to this address, it's going to give you this GIS map, and then it'll ask you to plug in your residential street address with your number and your street name, and it will kind of feed out to you what your watershed address is. So this is my home watershed address, and it basically tells you from smallest to largest how water flows from your property into what for us is usually going to be, well, it doesn't have to be Tennessee River, it could be French Broad or Clinch, but for me it's Tennessee River. So I'm within Fort Loudon and then Watts Bar and then out to the upper Tennessee River. So it's a nice way for you to kind of remember that what's happening on your property is never happening in isolation, and it's always connected to the bigger waterway system. So those little tiny actions you're taking on your property actually really make a huge difference in our local ecosystem. So that's a fun one. Another thing you can do, and this is another document that is listed on the UT horticulture pages. If you search for UT Extension publication W300, it will pull up this really cool resource that helps you do a stormwater assessment. It even gives you the map grid paper on that link as well. And what you can do from there is sort of draw an overhead shot of your property with impervious surfaces like your driveway or a walkway to the front door, and then the rooftop where rain is running off, and things like decks, and then obviously you can include kind of garden bed areas. This kind of document's useful for lots of things, not just for stormwater management. It's great if you're looking to site new trees or plants, or think about where you want to put in any other kind of landscaping or hardscaping features. But it really will help you to look at where water is flowing. And so it'll give you some prompts and then some best management practices for what to do with the information you're receiving. And think through some really simple things like how you're getting rid of pet waste, if you're washing your car in your driveway, is that soap going down into the road, or are you able to think about the water flowing back into the grass where it can actually filter the soap before it goes down the roadway? Thinking about where your downspouts come out, and whether that's back into the street or back into either turf grass area or garden bed area where it can again go slower and get filtered. Thinking about when you fertilize your lawn, and actually kind of counterintuitively, even though you want the fertilizer to get watered in, you don't want to be applying fertilizer before a heavy rainfall. Most of that's actually just going to wash right off into the road, and what happens then is we get these green, I'm sure you've seen them, bright green algae blooms within our rivers and lakes and streams, which isn't good for aquatic life. So just thinking about not so much canceling things that you do, but being thoughtful about the way in which you do them. The last piece of prompts that come out of this publication are landscape design choices. And that's some of the stuff that I'm going to talk to you about more in depth as we go today. Another thing that you can do to assess how well water is draining from certain parts of your yard is to do a percolation test. And this is something you want to do when the soil is already moist. So something after rainfall. I can attest that if you try to do this when it's really dry, digging 12 inches down in clay is just beyond a labor of love. That's really hard to do. So try to wait until you've got some wet soil to work with. But you're going to dig a 12 by 12 by 12 hole, and then you're going to fill it with water, and then you're going to kind of watch and see how long it takes to come out. So you've got kind of excellent drainage if it's an empty hole in under 3 hours. 3 to 12 is like adequate drainage, fine for things, and really not great drainage if it's taking more than 12 hours for that hole to empty out water. But this is a pretty simple way for you to think about how water is flowing and how that relates to your landscaping desires and choices, and also about, if you have really poor drainage, you're thinking about compacted soils and what else could be running right off the surface of either your lawn or driveway or garden that isn't so great downstream. Another really easy tool and great thing to have on hand is a rain gauge or a sensor. I use my little froggy for a while. He got broken, but I use my little froggy to tell me, especially after I've been out of town, how much water has fallen. That really helps you gauge how much you should be adding to turf or to your veggie garden. Most are going to need 1 to 1.5 inches of water per week. We've been getting plenty of water recently, but then you've got a dry spell like this week, and so even though it'd be nice if it evened out, it doesn't quite work that way. So if you've got a dry spell, it's really nice to have a visual read on how much water has been falling. If you have in-ground irrigation, it's really great to have a rain sensor that's sort of adjusting that sprinkling setup so you're not overwatering, which can actually lead to its own set of drama problems, especially for turf grass. So really just being smart with the water that you're using and having a visual way to keep track of that, because it's kind of impossible to do without some kind of measurement tool. You can do it. Another strategy to help with the way you use water on your lawn is to raise the height of your mower. Or ask your lawn service people to raise the height of their mower, or as I did with my neighbor down the street, have him show me the height of the mower while I was out of town. He was kind enough to mow my lawn, but I wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to get scalped. So this is a trial that was done at Oregon State University, and the only difference between these 3 sets of grass is the mowing height. So they didn't do anything else other than mow the grass higher. And here for fescue, 2 inches is actually, you would want 3 to 4 for fescue growing here. And then a zoysia or Bermuda, like a warm season grass, you would want something you could do more like 2 to 3 inches. But you can get the grass pretty high, and what it does is just increases that root depth, which then holds moisture, which is good for your grass because then it doesn't dry out so quickly. It also provides that extra layer of filtration before the water goes back into our waterway system. Another strategy you can implement are permeable pavers. So this can be a big undertaking if you're doing it for an entire driveway, but there are some other opportunities to think about, whether that's a path through your garden beds or maybe a walk to the front door, where you could replace something like a concrete paver with something that's going to allow, again, water to filter down and stay on the property. You can buy some of these kits like as DIY and do it yourself, and I listened to one of our fellow Master Gardeners talk about the process they went through to do their long driveway, which was very intensive, and they had somebody kind of clear it out for them so that it was level enough for them to then lay in these paver systems. But this is a really great way, again, to retain water and have it filter on your property. This is a much loved setup for water retention on your property, and that is to install a rain barrel at one of the downspouts of your roof. And rain barrels are an awesome way to capture water that you can then use back on your property, typically not for within your veggie beds, but things like perennial plant beds or even on your lawn. Frankly, however you use it is just better than letting it flow down during a regular rainstorm, because you're kind of reducing the rate of water flow on the property and contributing to storm water down the street just by keeping it on site for that period of time where it's in the rain barrel. So these can look really decorative. They can look kind of more engineered. The second one is actually available through a partnership between the cities of Knoxville and Farragut from Water Quality Forum, and I've put that link on your handout as well. You can order a kit directly from them that includes the rain barrel. You can find kind of these more ornate terracotta ones they're not actual terracotta, they're like a plastic, but from a big box store. And then this is my rain barrel, and it was a donated rain barrel. Someone said, oh, I have this extra one, someone's moving, here you go. And then the kit that I got was just from Amazon. I think it was $35. The beauty of it was you don't have to cut the whole downspout. It comes with pre-drilling saws, if you will, you can attach to your drill. You cut a very small, properly sized hole and insert this sort of, oh my gosh, I'm losing my words, but like a little, not plastic, but like a
rubber gas.
Thank you, rubber. A rubber hose into the downspout, which you can then take out in the wintertime because you do want to disconnect your rain barrel so it doesn't swell and freeze if we get a cold snap. But this is a really great way to reuse water, and I still think it's kind of miraculous every time I go to open a thing and fill my watering can with it that this water's just been saved from a rainy day for my yard. So this is a really great, easy strategy. One of the things to think about is the height of your rain barrel. So if you can get it, like I have on some concrete pavers, and that's just like 4 concrete paver cylinder things from Lowe's with 4 little toppers. It helps because you want the water up high enough that gravity will allow it to come out. The lower it is to the ground, the harder it is to get a container underneath. You can attach a hose to it, but you're not going to get water pressure. And again, if everything's downhill from your rain barrel, then it will work pretty well. But if it's a flat surface, the hose is a pretty limited way to use it. But again, just a great way to redistribute water on your property. Another thing to think about is downspout redirection. So it's really ideal if you have downspouts that are pushing water away from your property and away from the foundation back into garden beds or onto your lawn in areas where you're not using a rain barrel. We also see a lot of this middle French drain setup. Sometimes that's fine and works really well. It kind of depends on whether you know where the French drain ends up. And that in some yards is a question mark. So if you know, for instance, you put them in and you know it just goes back out in the middle of your yard, that's lovely and that's a great system and that kind of achieves the same goal. But if it is running out to like a drain like this at the edge of the driveway into your road, that is not ideal for kind of reducing that stormwater runoff, and it's really contributing to that stormwater flow, and that water is just not having the same amount of time to get filtered because it's just going through a drain system pretty quickly. So this is something where you need to kind of investigate what your downspouts are doing in order to assess, how well you're using that water and helping it to not go so quickly during a storm. Just another graphic that I like from the city of Milwaukee. So just a couple of visuals on how we're moving water back into our yards, and really just trying to be creative about keeping that water on the property, which sometimes doesn't feel like the goal you want to have if you have too much water. But rain barrels are a great solution for that, especially if you end up with really wet areas. And the gutters, when you can, letting them go back into the lawn is just great too, if that works for you. So some other ideas for what to do with water in your yard. This is one of them. This is a dry well, and this takes, again, some real digging work. So as you can see, it requires like a smaller diameter of crushed stone for a distance down below the surface, and then sort of larger, not quite boulders, but decorative stones at the top. But really it's just another way for water to be flowing in the property. And if you're not looking to add a bunch of plants, but you are looking to kind of work with the water the way it's moving, this is a good strategy and really hits a lot of the points for sustainability that we've been talking about thus far. I think we see a lot of these. I hear this word a lot, or people talk about, hey, I have this depression between my yard and my neighbor's. Sometimes there is intentional as this, which is a swale, and I guess the intentionality is based on the fact that there are actual drains or maybe a dry well at the end of it, but there's some way that water is being directed and moved so that that water can stay in a certain area and get filtered through, in that case, the turf grass, in this case, the vegetation. So there are lots of different kinds of swales. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, you should just Google bioswales. But you've got an option that's as sort of simple as a turf grass, And that's simple from the standpoint of, keeping it mowed and keeping it kind of clean and neat. I know a lot of people are saying, well, that's not really cutting it. Mine's still, really filled with water. Or the grass is really just standing water alongside it. I would really encourage a look at more of a vegetated swale. It is more kind of time investment and setup up front, but you're going to, be incorporating plants that are happy to be in water-filled areas. And really, again, it's an opportunity to create. I think it's kind of visually pleasing to have like a set of plants in that area, and an opportunity to create, again, a water filtration and holding system within your property. There are other choices that I didn't get pictures of, but xeriscape's not going to apply to us as much, although there are places that are nice and dry in yards to be able to think about doing that, and then wet swales as well. This is really technical, but I guess I just wanted to show you how different types of this mechanism of a swale actually removes pollutants. So again, these swale links are on your handout. So if you want to get into the weeds of this, no pun intended, then this is a good way to go, and really just gives you an idea of how you can utilize this best on your property. Sometimes swales and rain gardens it's like, how are these different? How are these not the same thing? So with a swale, the mechanism is actually that the water is being filtered while it's moving in a direction. And with rain gardens, the water is sort of meant to just come and stay and filter down in a set area. So it's not as directionally focused necessarily as a swale, although I'm sure that's not true for all rain gardens. There are a lot of cool rain garden ideas and installations that have happened here locally. This is a picture from UT's campus, and it is their Claxton Rain Garden, and it's near the College of Education. There's also a newly installed rain garden at the edge of UT Trial Gardens, and it's right in the back of the children's garden by the entrance, just across from the vet building. So if you're there and you're interested in kind of seeing how that looks, this is another great way. So this is the before and after picture, and obviously this is a huge rain garden area. This is not, it doesn't necessarily have to be that you install a massive rain garden, but rain garden size can be determined by how much water you're trying to move. So there are lots of rain garden resources on here. The Tennessee Smart Yard page also has a set of rain garden resources and lists of native plants to use in rain gardens as well. So that's really useful. They've also started to list other rain gardens in the area, and that is at this link. So it's the Tennessee Smart Yard page / on the ground. And again, this is like the difference in how a rain garden works, but you're incorporating wetland plants and things that are happy to use that water and filtrate that water. You're also building a wildlife habitat in the process. So again, it has multiple benefits and really can just be a beautiful way to manage that water if you want to go that route. This is a list of plants used in a rain garden at the Discovery Rain Garden, which is at the Plateau Ag Research and Ed Center in Crossville. I guess my point in showing you this is there are lots of these types of resources out there where they give you kind of a chart with the plants that were used in a specific rain garden. And what I find to be the most valuable piece of information are the letters on the left-hand side. So they are giving you a great indication of how much water each of the plants likes based on the placement of the plant in the rain garden. So when you've got this like upper area, you're looking at plants that aren't ready to stay wet at all times. They might not even need that much water. But then you've got middle and lower that are going to be more okay with times when they're really getting saturation and even water rising up into the plant area. So I have found repeatedly good resources like this where even if you're not trying to create an entire rain garden installation You're not trying to create a swale, but you are saying, I just know there's a lot of water pooling in this area and I wish it looked better and I just want to stick something there to help it. I find rain garden charts to be incredibly instructive. They're usually native plants to Tennessee, which is awesome, and usually means they'll do the best too because they're used to the conditions that you're putting them in. So this is just a really great way. If you just kind of Google it, you can go through the Tennessee Smart Yard page and they've got a couple. But when I looked up rain garden native plantings and you get these charts with the descriptors on the left of where they've been put in the rain garden, that's been my secret code for how to find plants that I want to add to my yard. So highly recommend that. So now we're just going to talk about a few really pretty, lovely plants that don't mind being wet. So obviously there are a lot more of these. Some of these are listed in that rain garden page that we just passed. But this is the southern blue flag iris. And it can be between like 2 and 2.5 feet clumps. And really does best in pretty wet soil. So as you can see here, you're looking at almost like a wetland environment. And it can grow even in 6 inches of standing water, which is a lot of water. And really, it's a beautiful iris and kind of a different look, but something that's pretty consistent with our irises that get grown here in Tennessee. It spreads by rhizomes, so it can go underneath and kind of keep populating, which is a beautiful gift if you would like more of them. And again, these go well for water gardens, rain gardens, pond margins, areas where there's going to be a lot of water. This is the copper iris for its beautiful, kind of interesting red color. And it is native to swamps and wetlands of the deep south and lower Mississippi Valley from Louisiana all the way to southeastern Missouri and then southern Illinois. So it kind of has this nice swath of place. It was found primarily in bald cypress swamps. And there are, again, this is like another one that's really happy to be in water, but this could do with drying up in the summer a little bit, so it doesn't have to be in that standing water at all times. And it sounds like they get pollinated by hummingbirds, so you'd be inviting a beautiful species to your yard for that as well. This funky plant is the eastern bottle brush grass. And it can grow 2 to 5 feet tall. That's a pretty big difference in area, but I think you should imagine somewhere in 3 to 5 feet. I would imagine if it's happy. But again, this is great for riparian plantings. This is sort of what I was talking about before, this zone that we try to create on the edges of waterways, but can be used in a rain garden setting as well. And it's happy to get more shade than not. This is the sallow sedge plant, and again, you can see how much water it's in. But it's good for things like water gardens or wet meadows or swampy areas, just areas where you're going to see a lot of standing water, sitting water. And it does not like to get dry, so this is one you might actually have to supplement with water if you were going to include it. And then some trees that are native to swampland areas that are happy to have water around them. Obviously, it depends on kind of what you introduce them to in your yard, how well they're performing. But this is the American hornbeam. It has really beautiful red in the fall. And it is drought tolerant, but it really is happy to get the moisture. So it might be a tree you want to think about making sure that it's not going to get too dried out in the summertime. You can do sun or shade and not alkaline soils, but other than that, it's happy to be in moist areas. This is the green ash. This is not actually recommended in certain places because of the emerald ash borer, so it's kind of good to keep that in mind since that is such a devastating problem. But this is a beautiful tree, and again is pretty happy to have that wet soil as well. It's from open woodlands and streams and riverbanks and things like that, and it's a pretty big tree. So another thing to consider as well. And this is a really fun oak, the overcup oak. Not necessarily something that sounds really prevalent in our gardening availability right now, but I love this quote from the Lady Bird Johnson Center that said, tolerates flooding, not widely available, but is likely to become an important landscape tree. So if you're looking to get ahead of the trends, this would be the tree for you. But it's a really, another really beautiful one, and it's, again, native to swampland areas, has really great leaf shape, and would be a great addition if you have a wet zone for a tree. This was not exhaustive, but these are my main plant information sources. These are on your handout at the top, but these all have really fabulous descriptions with growing requirements, native habitats, pictures. These are just all really great resources if you're looking for a bit more visual or verbal information about any of the plants we just talked about, and many, many more as well. Some other best practice solutions that we didn't go over today, but you can think about. Having your soil aerated is a really great way to manage the health of your turf grass, but that is directly correlated to the water flow on that turf grass and how much your grass is able to absorb the moisture rather than having it just run off when it rains. So really important to keep your lawn aerated. Roadside verge is typically something you might find on the side of a highway where they've planted like wildflowers or something that again is trying to sort of slow that runoff from cars. I personally wish I had a roadside verge at the edge of my property because it's just weeds, at the edge of my turf grass. So I haven't convinced my husband that we should do that yet, but I'm on the market for that. So another really great way to think about, reincorporating plantings as a way to filter water on your property. Just a reminder that soil coverage is really key. You don't want to go digging out a bunch of turf or trying to install a new plant bed without mulch ready to go or plantings ready to cover. Anytime you've got that bare soil, you're just looking at, erosion possibility, which doesn't really suit anybody. And then, ponds can be really involved to have on your property, and they're wonderful for things like wildlife or for enjoyment. But thinking about watershed ponds means thinking about the topography of your landscape and installing a pond in a place where you're going to get natural water additions from the flow and grade of your lawn and garden beds down towards that pond too. If you're curious about that, I would encourage you to look into that one as well. So now that you know all of these things about water, you would be well equipped to certify your yard as a Tennessee Smart Yard. The benefits of that are that they just prompted myself and my co-lead Mona and lots of people we've talked to about this to really implement these small changes that add up to pretty significant impact for our local environment. And this is Mona's yard. It's just stunning, full of interesting plants and kind of magical. But really, yards can look a lot of different ways and qualify to be a Tennessee Smart Yard. You can have mostly turf grass and minimal plantings and still be employing these practices that really think about the way water is being used, help water to be filtered, and then some of the things I mentioned at the beginning, like providing for wildlife, thinking about how you use fertilizer, et cetera, et cetera. So most of the requirements for becoming a Tennessee Smart Yard are very small, or you already do them. So it's easy to add up your points to qualify your yard. And it's a great way to continue to support the conversation for how we take care of this incredibly beautiful place that we live in. It's really also not just what's good for us as humans, but it's good for the creatures that we enjoy the world with as well. And these are just some of the beautiful pollinators that I have found. 2 of them are from my yard and one's at UT Gardens. But really incredible diversity of pollinators, and the more you're kind of attuned to the things that you're planting and the way you're using plants and water resources on your yard, really you just sort of get these beautiful gifts that kind of keep on coming and get more diverse at our house every year, which is really exciting. So these are some of the reasons that we have personally for wanting smart yards. It's all these different things. It's not about having a banner or proving that you're ahead of everybody else. It's really about caring for your family and your friends the beauty of the world around you and really stewarding that space. So all of these water things we talked about contribute really heavily to what it means to have a Tennessee Smart Yard, and would be a great kind of first effort towards certifying your yard. These are, I think, the list of things that I already sent out to you. They should be on your sheet as well, but there are so many good resources for knowing more information about these things. The other secret is always to include the word extension when you look up these different topics, and look for extension agencies, whether that be at UT or other universities that have these programs and provide these incredible resources to the public. They often have residentially oriented resources that make it really easy to implement things yourself. And that's it. So if you have questions, I'm happy to go back or chat about anything. Yes?
Okay. Sarah, you mentioned that rain barrel, when you collect the water, not to use it on vegetables. Why?
So not usually recommended because you can get there are some studies that have shown heavy metal sediment going from the roof into the rain barrel, and you don't really want to be transferring that into things that you could end up eating. So that's the number one. Sometimes you can get like algae or other stuff growing in there. So kind of, it's not a brown water, but you kind of want to be thinking about whether it's something that then you're going to eat. So that's been my general understood recommendation. Yeah. Yes.
On any of these websites, are there lists of landscaping companies that are smart yard?
That's a great question. Dr. Ludwig is in the process of creating a list like that. Keep your eyes out on the Tennessee Smart Yard page. She also, I don't use Facebook, but she has a Facebook thing where she sometimes will push information out as well, which is Tennessee Smart Yards. You can email her or us and kind of bug us for that, and we are eagerly awaiting that set of information.
But, excuse me, what about your lawn clippings?
Leave them on the lawn. It helps get lawn clippings, it helps get nitrogen back into your lawn, and you can just leave them right in place. Or you can compost them as well, so if you're not gonna leave them right on the grass, you can put them in your compost bin or in a compost pile in the back of the yard. But those are actually best used to provide nutrition to your existing plants on your property.
If you want to quantify, one of the interesting experiences I had was looking at a bag of organic lawn fertilizer. And it specifically said if you are putting your clippings, letting your clippings go back onto the lawn, cut your fertilizer application in half. So the fertilizer bag was a 1600. So basically they're saying your lawn clippings are the equivalent of an 800.
Yeah, it's amazing.
What about mosquito issues? When you've got a lot of water, even when you're using that water for plantings?
For good.
Yeah.
Some of that, I mean, I think if you're gonna have an area like a rain garden or somewhere where you're worried that they'll be breeding and things like that, is thinking about siting and location. Because mosquitoes actually don't move that far from where they breed. I forget what the distance is, but so that's one thing, is to consider where on the property you're encouraging that activity. Some of that has to do with really good integrated pest management. So thinking about the beneficial insects and bugs and bats and birds and other things that will come and help you with that population of mosquitoes. If it's an actual pond or a body of water or something, you can use mosquito dunks. You can use those things that kind of help kill, and people encourage you to do that if you have an open rain barrel top. Some rain barrels aren't fully closed at the top, so they'll put mosquito dumps in there, which basically disrupts the new mosquito breeding population. So it's always a consideration. Yes. Yeah, I would say siting and then thinking about utilizing that resource in the mosquito dump or something like that. Yeah.
No, the mosquito dumps are made of a naturally occurring bacteria, and it only kills the mosquito larvae.
Oh, okay. And how about this is all related to Knox County. You have a son who's got property in Loudoun County. Is the Smart Yard program available out there? Does it
We've
make
done a
any-
couple talks in Loudoun County for them, yep, and, yes, all of this, the
The
Tennessee Smart
certification.
Yard project is for the whole state.
Okay.
We just happen to be the Master Gardeners in Knox County talking about it. But the certifications for anybody in the state, Franklin, Tennessee has a big, really active group. So there are pockets of people who are super excited and making it happen kind of on a community basis. That's another one of the really cool things Smart Yards does is they offer a certification for Smart Yard communities. And that can look like a neighborhood or it could look like a church group that their membership has all certified their properties, but kind of a way to show the collective impact of not just one property being certified, but like a whole set of properties. And, you know, I have a graphic on our other talk about Smart Yards that shows, you know, you have one house and it's this many gallons of water that you've sort of reduced stormwater by, but when you get up to 75 houses, it's over 1 million gallons of water. So it really matters quite a bit. Yeah.
And how, now, does this apply also to bigger parcels, not just a yard, but you've got kids who have acreage?
Yeah.
How would they go about starting? They would contact you and?
Yeah, or they can even visit the webpage. So I have a printout of what sort of the sustainability principles and action items look like there. That's also all available. There's a worksheet, there's an interactive Excel sheet, and there's like a PDF that looks like the one here. It's all printable from the website, and you can kind of go and basically you start by gathering those materials, looking at what they call each of the action items for inches, and you add up to 36 inches for a yard to qualify for a smart yard. But basically, you get to choose your action items. So under each of the sustainability principle areas, there are 5 to 7 action items. You don't have to do every single one. That's the other really nice thing is it's really tailorable to your yard. So if you have a big property, you might be looking at a certain set of things. If you live in an apartment, that you're going to be looking at a completely different set of things. So it's really tailorable, really easy to say, oh, I already minimized my fertilizer use, or I already, you know, have a rain gauge, and those count towards your certification. But it's all on the website. There are videos that go with each of the principled areas, and they're each about 30 minutes. So part of the process is also to watch each of those videos. I usually recommend doing that while you're in the process of fulfilling inches and action items under a specific header, under one of the sustainability principles, because then it's sort of fresh in your mind. But you have those 9 videos, you fill out your worksheet, and then you submit a form that says, here's how I fulfilled my Smart Yard certification, and if you want to get a yard sign to show that, then you can do that. But
So it's all basically self-directed?
Self-guided, yes, but we're always here to talk about it, or if people have questions or anything like that, we're happy to kind of troubleshoot along the way. But one of our Smart Yards advocates, who's a Master Gardener, she has a horse farm, and so she's trying to figure out how to incorporate these principles in a completely different setting than my, you know, little suburban half an acre, quarter of an acre, whatever I have yard. So, but the nice thing is it really is applicable to like a yard of any size. Well, thank you so much for coming. You've been